to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and this is the opening of part 2 of my mid-month book bash vlog here in the month of November. So it is Saturday, November the 13th, and yeah, I just wanted to update you on where I am with my reading. So I finished another book. This is book 3 for the mid-month book bash. If you remember, my goal is to read 4 books, so doing pretty well. I finished this book yesterday. This is Atlas of Poetic Zoology by Emmanuelle, Pouydebat, and it's illustrated by Julie Terenzoni and translated by Eric Butler. And you guys have, I've raved about this multiple times, so I don't need to rave about it anymore. This is a collection of short essays with a full-page illustration of about 40 different really cool animals. And I just thought it was so much fun to read, so charming. I mean, the writing itself is a little bit choppy, a little bit, it doesn't flow very well sometimes, but the facts themselves that she's presenting about the animals are just completely, some of them are just astounding. And I spent a lot of time Googling different things. Some of the animals I was familiar with, some of the animals I was not familiar with. So yeah, I just think that this is a really beautiful book. It's beautifully produced. It's a hardcover. I've shown the illustrations multiple times. They're full color, absolutely gorgeous, really, really lovely. Just a lovely book in itself. Just a nice object to have. And I really enjoyed learning more about these different animals. One thing that I learned in this book that I did not know is that I did know that certain animals are, they can be either male or female depending on the conditions in their environment at the time. But I did not know that some animals can just have babies without ever having, a sperm meet an egg sort of a situation. So the particular species that's discussed in this book, let me see if I can find the section, is a species of shark that was in an aquarium in Nebraska. There were 3 female sharks in this aquarium. They had been there for 3 years, and then, so it was a hammerhead shark. These 3 female hammerhead sharks had been in this aquarium in Nebraska for 3 years, and then all of a sudden a baby shark appeared in the tank with these female sharks. And so at first the keepers, the scientists there had said, well, some sharks can hold on to sperm for a long period of time and then fertilize their eggs when conditions are better. But generally that's only like 6 months or so. So it had been 3 years, so that was unclear. Then they thought, maybe the female shark had been able to get into contact with a male shark of another species, and this maybe was, a mixture between 2 species. So they did DNA testing and found out that, in fact, no, they've even figured out which female shark had the baby because the DNA matched between the mother and the baby. And the female shark had just simply fertilized her own egg, basically, and had a baby shark. And so this is the phenomenon is parthenogenesis, which is sexual reproduction without fertilization. Who knew? I don't remember ever learning that in school and never come across it in any of the particular species that I work with. But fascinating, just fascinating. So this book is filled with different little stories like that are just amazing. I mean, the world is an amazing, amazing place. And that's why I love books like this. So that was highly, highly successful. So glad that Britta and I have read that book together. I've also been working on my Best American Science and Nature Writing collection. I am now at page 109. Read a few more essays out of this. It's going very well. And I have also done some reading in this nonfiction book, If Then, How the Simulmatics Corporation Invented the Future by Jill Lepore. And as I said before, I really like Jill Lepore's writing, and this book is just fascinating as it details the history of how, as computer advancements happened, people who were interested in analyzing the behavior of humans were able to use computer technology to do some of that analysis. And that was the basis for like advertising, for, in this book, what's described a lot is how it was used to try to predict how voters would vote in presidential elections, particularly in the Nixon-Stevenson race in, is that 1960? I can't remember for sure. I think it's 1960, but it could have been 1962. Yeah, and that is just absolutely fascinating because everything that's being described here is now just commonplace. It's just what happens. And Adlai Stevenson was completely against advertising in any shape or form. He felt it was manipulation of the public, and he did not want to have any part of that. And both Eisenhower and Nixon embraced advertising for their election campaigns, and of course they both won. And what these people are figuring out about how human brains work in terms of how you make choices and how you are influenced to make those choices is stuff that we're all familiar with very much now in today's social media and computer technology age, but was all new information and new ways of doing things back in the 50s. So yeah, completely fascinating how that all began. If you were a fan of the Mad Men TV shows, which I have never watched, but if you like that show, I think you would like this book because it very much has that same sort of contextualization of the story. So yeah, really, really good. Enjoying that. So those are the books that I've been working on. I also still have one graphic novel that I want to finish this weekend. So I will check in again later after I have more progress to report. So it's Saturday evening, and I have finished my fourth book for the weekend. I read in one sitting, basically, Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. Oseman, not really sure. So yeah, this book was, again, delightful. I actually thought this one I liked a little bit less than Volume 2, but still loved. And the only thing that was different about this didn't make me cry as much. But in this one, our two main characters, Nick and Charlie, get to go to Paris on a school trip, and we get a little bit more information about their circle of friends and what their circle of friends is going through, as individuals. And I just love the inclusive nature of the storyline, and just so many issues are brought up. And I like that this relationship that Charlie and Nick are going through is not, we've gone through their, meeting and getting together and all that sort of thing. And now the lived reality of being together and what that's like for them, and how people have to continually go through things. Life is not always smooth sailing. And I appreciated that about this book. I just appreciate the reality that Alice Oseman brings to the storyline, and yet it's just so adorable. It's just so cute and heartwarming throughout. So yeah, really, really encourage you to pick up Heartstopper. Start with Volume 1, obviously, and then just continue because it is amazing. I also would like to report that Doris has led me astray from my TBR, and I have now picked up You Never Forget Your First by Alexa somebody. I will put the cover up, which is a presidential biography written by a woman, the first one written by a woman, of George Washington. And Brian from Bookish had talked about this book a while ago and had recommended that I read it, that I would really enjoy it. And then Doris started reading it and sent me pictures of 3 or 4 pages of the introduction, and just based on those pages, I have to read this book. So I just was poking around on my library's ebook site and found that it was available to me at that moment. And so I, of course, had no self-control. I borrowed it and started reading it, and I'm already 137 pages in. It's a very short biography, which I appreciate tremendously when a presidential biography is very short. And I also very much appreciate the humor of the book, but also the fact that the author does not treat Washington as like this untouchable hero. Like, she talks about his good qualities, but also about his bad qualities. And the way that she talks about how Washington lived his life and how that impacted other people, particularly enslaved people, particularly women, is really a breath of fresh air. I just have to say, it's such a breath of fresh air. I just like reading history nonfiction from the point of view of voices we don't often hear from. And I like how the author is very much taking the point of view that we need to re-examine all of our history, because all of our history has been written by white men. And so they had a certain view of the world, whereas everybody else has an entirely different perspective, as they would, because they experience the world differently than white men do. So yeah, it's great. So far, I'm over halfway through. Love it. And I'm not sorry I blew up my TBR for that. But I did meet my goal already of reading 4 books during the mid-month book bash. So even if I don't complete anything else tomorrow, which I think I will, but if I don't, for reasons, this mid-month book bash will have been a success. Yay! Everyone, it is Sunday afternoon. What is the date? The 14th of November. It is the last day for me for mid-month book bash, and I have one more book to report that I have finished. Yes, 5 books total for this weekend. So good. I mean, I haven't done anything but be at home, so it's not surprising. But so this is the book that I blew up my own TBR with, because Doris showed me some pages of the very beginning, and that is You Never Forget Your First by Alexis Cole. This nonfiction is a presidential biography of George Washington, and it is most certainly the shortest one I've ever encountered. It's like only around 200 pages long, written with a lot of humor, from a very different perspective, because of course Alexis Cole is a female. She is a woman author, and that is pretty rare when it comes to presidential biographies. I can tell you, as a person that's read quite a few presidential biographies, that it is very rare. And I really appreciated the way she approached the subject matter. She is not vilifying Washington, but she's also not making a hero out of him. She's just honestly telling the story of his life and telling us what he was good at, what he was bad at, things that he did that were morally questionable, things that he did that were morally wrong, and things that he did that were good. So I felt it was quite a even-handed handling of the subject matter, and from a very different perspective than what we normally see, because this talks about not only Washington's career, so his childhood, his early days as a surveyor and a member of the British militia, and then his subsequent leader of men for the revolution, and then elevation to the presidency, the first president of the United States, and then his post-presidency life. All of which very well done, very much to the point. Like, she doesn't dawdle around with unnecessary details, which I very much appreciated. She very much shows where some of the peripheral members of Washington's family had been treated fairly badly by biographers, namely his mother, who is always, in biographies I've read of Washington in the past, is just sort of made out to be this shrewish woman who was bent on ruining Washington's career and just was really selfish and wanted all of his attention. When there isn't real evidence for that in the documentation that still exists from the time period. And Washington, he was a complicated character. He liked the adulation, but he also liked his private family life. He was very much a loving father to his stepchildren and never had any children of his own. He made some real blunders militarily, but he was a genius when it came to like sort of using a spy network and instilling fear into the hearts of his enemies through sort of PR and whisper campaigns and that sort of thing. So he was an interesting character for sure, but he doesn't need to be glorified and made into this godlike figure the way that he normally is in American history, because certainly the way he treated slaves was abhorrent. He owned slaves. He kept saying he wanted to free them, but he never did. In fact, when slaves escaped from him, he chased them down. He had no problem with them being beaten and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think she's quite clear on the evidence when it comes to how Washington treated his enslaved people. So yeah, I highly recommend You Never Forget Your First by Alexis Cole if you like to read U.S. history. If you are interested in getting started with presidential biographies, I would highly recommend this as a place to start, because like I said, it is only 200 pages or thereabouts, and it's like, you can actually read this. I read it in less than 24 hours. It was excellent and funny in places and heartfelt in places, just really well done. One other thing I will say about Washington that didn't really strike me from the other biographies I've read about him is how many times he was ill in his life and survived it. It's like he went through a lot of illness and survived it. And so you just gotta say, man, the man went through a lot. He physically, he endured a lot. So yeah, that was an interesting thing that I took away from this as well. So I also wanted to give you a little update as far as COVID goes. So my husband's doing well, continues to struggle with the loss of taste, which is the major symptom that he has from all of this. I am doing well, as you can see, and I tested again today for the second time since this has all started and tested negative again. So yay vaccines, all I can say, yay vaccines. So yeah, this is where we're at, and he will be home from work in quarantine until the 17th, and I, of course, am still working from home, so my daily schedule will not change. But yeah, I just am thankful that we're weathering this as well as we are. So that is it for me. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. I hope you participated in Mid-Month Book Bash and found some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.